Good morning, good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're coming to us from. My name is Kimberly Wall. I'm part of the sales engineering team here at NEOGOV. But prior to joining the company, I actually spent 12 years in public sector HR. So I'm excited to be a part of our conversation today about how to boost your recruitment, retention, and workplace culture. A couple of reminders as we get started here today. Um, if you're going to look at the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see that panel where you're going to be able to add questions or comments throughout the webinar. We do have individuals monitoring that, so please feel free to drop your comments or questions there. We will have a Q&A session once we get through our round table discussion. You're also going to be able to drop down that audio box and select either computer audio or phone audio. So if you are not able to hear us, you do have the ability to dial in. And then also a reminder, this webinar is recorded. So tomorrow you'll be receiving an email that has a link to this recording and a copy of the presentation slides that we're going to be going through today. I am joined today by HR professionals from around the United States that are going to be sharing their experiences and best practices for recommendations throughout our discussion. Wanted to give a quick introduction to everyone on the line. So first we have Ms. Deborah Erb, who's a principal business analyst with the County of San Luis Obispo, California. We also have Ms. April Kurtz, who is an HRIS business analyst with St. Johns County Board of County Commissioners. We're also joined by Ms. Cheryl Lewis-Smith, who is the president-elect for IPMA, as well as the HR director in Sumner County, Tennessee. And then last but not least, we have Ms. Pam Pennington, who is a senior HR analyst with City of Wichita, Kansas. So we want to thank each of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today and to be a part of our discussion. We know that you all are very busy, but we're glad that you were able to join us today to share some of your expertise with those on the line. So at the end of April, we sent out a survey to about 1,000 HR professionals and wanted to ask them what their #1 issue is that they're facing in 2022. And the resounding answer to that question was recruitment and attracting top talent. So today we've brought you in some of those best practice experts that are going to share their experiences and how they've navigated some of these challenges through so far this year. So our first question that we have is, what sourcing strategies or tools have you implemented to help attract that top talent in such a competitive job seeker market? So I want to first go over to April and see if she can give us some of the strategies that she's been utilizing.
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. Hello, everyone. One of the big strategies or tools that we implemented was technology. So an applicant tracking system, background screenings, and utilizing social media. By changing our applicant tracking system platform that we're currently using, we were able to get more candidates that were focused on public sector. Whereas before, those avenues really did not give us that opportunity. So now we are able to actually target through governmentjobs.com, through Indeed, through some of these other professional memberships that we utilize. Here we're able to actually advertise these jobs, take advantage of those. We hope to do more with social media. We use LinkedIn and some of those social media platforms. But one of the big things that we found was responsiveness. So one of the tools and strategies, we didn't want to miss out on those candidates to the private sector. So our applicant tracking system just really had to change. We had to be able to respond and hire more efficiently than we had in the past. So we're now seeing the benefits of that applicant tracking system through our data and our metrics that we're collecting. We offered also a relocation hybrid opportunity for new hires, which allows them to work virtually until they're able to relocate to St. Johns County. So it's identified when they first onboard. It allows them to secure their home in St. Johns County and work remotely where they are until they're able to secure that home and move and relocate. It's used for hard to fill or executive type positions. It's worked out great. We're also utilizing our talent internally. We want to make sure that we give those opportunities to our talent here. So we looked at compensation as a whole. We decided, like, what could we do to attract the talent? Could we do more than the minimum? If we could, then we did, but maybe we couldn't. Maybe our budget and our restraints for that, we just couldn't do it. So we offered flexible work schedules, and we continue to provide the benefits that we have without sacrificing providers or services. Things that were provided or covered. So those were some of the things that we used.
Excellent. I think, Pam, maybe did you have some additional strategies that you were utilizing over in Kansas?
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, we really transitioned for more of our what I would call leadership roles and mid-level managers. We had a lot of retirements going on, and I think in the public sector, it's always been common to use an outside agency to do those recruitments. So we were able to secure a LinkedIn recruiter seat, where we have now used that for the past 5 years, and it has saved us a lot of money to be able to have that. That has been, I think, a huge shift from what they were used to using. And then one of the more unique things that I think we have done for, positions that are local, more local wise, where we're not doing a regional or a national search, is we advertised on our own buses that run around town, constantly in all parts of the city. And that has produced some great results.
I think that's a very, kind of out of the box or non-traditional approach, Pam. I love that idea. I think now about when I'm driving around town and, there's always buses. So I think that was a great kind of out of the box idea to go with there. So that's great. The next question we're going to talk about here is, now that we've maybe attracted some of those, what are some of the best practices for moving candidates actually through that hiring process efficiently, and what all have you done to be able to reduce that time to hire? I think Deborah had some great ideas for us on this particular question. Oh, I think you're muted.
For us, it was really reducing barriers to participating in interviewing, and our timeline from exam plan to eligible list and hire. And so a couple of things we've done is implemented video interviewing, so that that makes it easier for our panel members to assemble our candidates, provide recorded video interviews. What's great is that we use those for scoring to form the eligible list, but then those same videos can be used for other recruitments, or they're passed on into the referral list. So really our candidates have usually 1 or 2 final interviews where they come on site. So that has helped. We also have moved to a speed dating kind of model, where on the same day we have our candidates that are NQ'd go through a traditional panel interview, and then if they pass that interview, they go immediately into a hire interview. And then if we intend to offer them a position and hire them, we extend that offer that same day, and they complete background paperwork, and we're off to hire. So those 2 things have really helped us. We also do use analytics to anticipate vacancies. So now that we have been on our applicant tracking system and we've implemented position control, we have really good analytics for those positions that people are promoting into, and thus creating vacancies for entry-level positions. So we have good analytics to target, well, what positions are we going to continually fill and promote people from.
I think those are great points. I think that even kind of builds off some of what April was saying with, adding technologies in to help assist you with all of these processes. You've mentioned the video interviews to then those assessment center kind of scenarios where it's like, okay, we're going to allocate time today and we're going to move them through multiple pieces of that time to hire timeline to, make it the most efficient time for them, taking time off from their current job to be there in that moment and not having to do that multiple times, or again for your staff that's participating in that assessment center. I think that's great. Did anyone else on the panel have any best practices you wanted to share?
I'd like to mention that planning ahead and benchmarking are vital to the process and creating the interview guides, and also those matrix that you use for scoring, that they're very essential. And even with some of the applicant tracking programs or learning modules, they provide the tool to do pre-assessment questioning. And that way you're able to weed out a lot of the candidates or a lot of the applicants who may be interested, but they just don't hit the mark with what you're looking for. So being able to utilize the pre-screening assessment questions or the tools that are in the learning systems that are available to you are very key in helping to expedite the process in planning and screening. Also, another thing would be to educate your panel or the individuals who are serving on the selection committee, so that way they understand what they're looking for. Look for the key look-tos in the applicants, and to be able to formulate questions that will help speed it along.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are great points. Leaning into these technologies that we've invested this money into, and allowing them to help us kind of walk through that process, and then using those analytics to see what is or what isn't working, I think are great points to bring up. So what adaptations have you actually made to help retain some of your employees during this great resignation period? I know April kind of alluded to some of what they were doing, but I think Pam had some information she wanted to share with us in reference to some of what she was doing.
Sure. So in Wichita, we have probably 20, I would say almost 2,800 full-time and part-time regular staff. And during the whole Great Resignation period, we, probably did what a lot of people did immediately, outside of the federal funds for the leaves that were paid. We really, our city council and our mayor increased our starting wage almost immediately. So that helped tremendously. And then we also have 5 unions that we work with, and they really all came to the table as quickly as they could to help with the folks that were already here to implement, some kind of a bonus plan, or for certain positions, we increased paid time off days. And then, of course, during that period, you had a lot of people who weren't here. And so other people had to take on those duties, and they weren't able to take their vacations. So we really did a good job of extending their vacation use lose, making sure they were able to keep that time. But I think probably the biggest issue for us is, now that we're all trying to kind of return to some kind of normal, whatever that looks like now, it is this continued issue with remote work, and trying to make sure we're balancing that, with the old way of doing things. We've already proven that it can be done, So now it's an ongoing training with our managers to say, what can we do to continue this? Because more and more companies, are saying, hey, you want to work remote? And people are like, yeah, we really like that now. So we're just trying to balance that with the need to be in the office. So it's an ongoing training issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that the Great Resignation is teaching employers is how important work-life balance really is. And a lot of employees have proven, over the last two years that remote work can work in a lot of different scenarios. So employers being open to kind of allowing that to continue in some type of form or fashion to allow that work-life balance, I think is going to be critical during, this Great Resignation period. So moving
Yeah.
into our, yes, ma'am.
Can I add something to what Pam said?
Sure.
We had the policy, which our benefits team had developed, the compassionate leave policy, which also, to Pam's point, allowed people to have leave donated to them during COVID. And one of the things that we ran into, one of those challenges, was people were still not having enough leave. So then they did another leave policy to allow for those staff to have additional leave outside of those standard limits donated to them, of course, all by the policy. And then also for probationary employees who may have just started, who didn't have leave, there was a special policy that was created for those employees. And I think it was really great. It met the need at that time. And we had some trackers, like we collaborated with a hospital, and it allowed them through an app on the phone for them to report symptoms. This was something our benefits team really worked hard on, and our risk management team actually worked with our MIS departments, creating a COVID response for the whole county for the state of Florida through the EOC for vaccination scheduling and reporting. So it was a real out of the box thinking for everyone involved during this time. So it's real important to kind of put it to the side. We've always done it like this before, because it really made us think about how we could still get everything done that we needed to get done, but to do it in a whole different way. So
Right. Yeah, we all had to very quickly, practice the power of the pivot, in an ever-changing situation that we didn't know how long it was going to last or what was going to change, from day to day. So we not only had to worry about how are we going to bring people on board in such a difficult time, but what can we do to really kind of keep the employees that we do have? And I think that's where we can, think through this next question of, what can we do to encourage those employees to pursue career advancement with our agency? And, what can we do from a training perspective to kind of assist with that career progression? And Deborah has a really great story on what happened over at San Luis Obispo.
Sure. So we implemented our learning management system, and straight away in our onboarding, we automated our onboarding several years ago, and we have a video introduction by our CAO that introduces our county values. And we also offer training linked into that onboarding and orient people to our learning management system and the variety of training that is available to them. So we had initially set a target to have 2,000 hours of training our first year of using the learning management system, and we overshot that. So today we have our employees, we have about 3,000 employees, and they're consuming about 75 hours of training a day, which was really amazing. We could not deliver that amount of training to our organization. The other thing that we do is we actually took our data for promotions in our organization, and we created a visual map of career progression. So people can look at their current job classification, and they can see a map of where other people have promoted, and they can then click on it and see the job classifications and the MQs within that system. So it helps people navigate what the options have been for other employees. And they can even see, we have some employees that started out as legal clerks and became department heads, or we've had accountants become, you know, elected officials, the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, so they can, you know, follow that individual's career and see what career steps they took. And obviously, I am a remote worker.
Yes, I think we need an introduction. What is our co-host name here?
This is Tabby. He seems to love it when I'm on webinars to come up here and be a star. But I was part of that move to, my husband retired and wanted to move to the country. So I still work for San Luis Obispo County, but I live about 250 miles away now. And their need to retain me, I now work in my home office.
Yeah, I think that's great. Oh, and Tabby said, okay, I've made my appearance. I've been acknowledged. I'm going to go take a nap again now. Yeah, I think that's great. You know, obviously I'm in a remote setting here as well. And I think that it's amazing that by, you know, investing in that technology, you've essentially invested in your employees, and they are just, you know, maxing out what they can do with that learning management system that you have, you know, not only in just recruitment, but oftentimes because of the Great Resignation, our human resources can be limited. So if we were having to administer all of that training in person, I mean, that would be multiple people, a full-time job just doing training every day. So I think being able to lean into those technologies and allow them to keep your employees going and giving that very clear visual on, you know, well, this is the role that I'm in today, but where can I go from here? Being proactive, as Cheryl had shared, in showing them what that can look like in the future is just something that is going to benefit everybody kind of from go. So that was a really great use case there. Thank you for sharing that. And then we're going to head over to Cheryl for this question, but what alternatives are there for the public sector to accommodate some of those, you know, work from home or hybrid work schedules? What's your experience been like, Cheryl?
The experience has been great, especially in our state of Tennessee. You first have to establish a lot of trust factors and involve the flexibility and allow employees to feel like you're meeting them where they are because of the situation. But we've tried a number of things where we've had some shared cubicle spacing, a buddy system, 4 10-hour day schedules, flexibility in split shifts, and rotating in-house office time and outside, staggering shifts. Again, looking at each department and the organization to be able to figure out what are our needs, what are our employee needs. If you have individuals who have daycare needs and things of that nature, or children who are in sporting activities, and or spouses that work out of town, and just trying to collaborate to make sure we're meeting the needs of both the organization and the employees. But with that, again, you have to entrust on knowing that you have checks and balances to make sure that things are in the proper place. And that's where that trust factor comes in. We're all in this together, and we know that most employees are motivated to do their jobs and in that respect. But again, allowing that extra time outside in the alternative work patterns creates stress in itself. So it's just learning to be flexible and having to balance and understanding that flexibility and creating that 4 10-hour day or those split shifts will allow them to continue to do the things for their children, for their spouses, for their families, for their personal lives, to take care of those doctor appointments and things that they need to do. And it's a win-win situation. And as long as there's, again, that trust and that flexibility, but then you do have those built-in checks and balances to ensure that it's working for everyone,
Right.
and then that is conducive.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as public sector employees, we know that ultimately we're serving the citizens of the communities that, you know, that we exist in. And I think you worded that so perfectly. We need to meet our employees where they are. I think that's something, Cheryl, I'm going to take away from this conversation and use that phrasing over and over, because it is so true. And I think that, you know, those employers of choice are the ones that are being open-minded and thinking about, you know, even though we are entering this new normal, what can we continue to do? What has been proven to be successful, where we're still meeting the needs of our citizens, but also allowing that flexibility for our individual employees. Anybody else on the panel have anything they'd like to share on this particular topic?
I would just say that there was a challenge with the technology because some staff had never worked remote before in their positions. So there was some training involved, because most people who had never worked remote didn't know how to use a VPN. So we were having to teach people. We became trainers, right, of how to use technology when maybe that was not in our original scope of work. So we were all pitching in where needed in order to get it done. And one of the challenges we faced with this too is we had gone from manual systems to electronic timekeeping, which was a new technology for them to have to use, but they accepted the challenge and they got it done, and we're so thankful for it. But it taught us that, you know, we could actually do something outside of the norm of public sector. Even those staff members who were out in the field, we had to think about how we were going to get them involved in this measure. And it has happened. And but I just want to say that was a great statement, Cheryl. That is a great take back.
Yes, like I said, that's the quote of the day for me today. So as we navigate to our last question of the roundtable, how do you showcase your commitment to diversity and company values at your organization, both internally and externally? You know, diversity and company values are things that applicants are paying very close attention to now as they are going out and looking for that next employer or determining whether they want to stay maybe where they're at. So April, can you tell us a little bit about what you all have done over at St. John's?
So one of the things that we've really been focusing on is our mission and our core values. So our mission is caring for the needs of St. Johns County. So when you're caring for the needs of St. Johns County, you're looking at the whole county. You know, what are those needs? And what can I do about it personally? And so our values are compassionate, trustworthy, and innovative. And so what does each of these mean, and how can I apply them in my job? So these are some of the things that we are putting out to our employees and staff, but we're also taking it back through the interview process. We're embedding these in our performance evaluation process, because our mission and values, they're going to drive diversity within the organization. So we want to make sure that we are communicating this at the very highest level, and it is that we're very transparent with it. We provide diversity training, and that's important. And our future goals, we have some future goals that we would like to do, such as diversity events and promotion of those events throughout the organization and the community. So it would be nice to be able to bring it all into one location where we can experience it with the outside. So we have some future goals. And but these are some of the things. The mission and the core values are very important for leadership to promote that and embrace that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I heard Deborah say that, as a part of their onboarding experience, they have a video from that CAO. Question for you, Deborah, do you include, anything about those company values right there as a part of that video, or is that something that's a part of the onboarding process?
Yes, that's a key part of our CAO's welcome video, is to talk about the values and what our mission is as a county. And it's reinforced again as our new candidates are oriented to their probationary period and their probationary evaluation. We have our competencies for the probation evaluation aligned to our county values as well. So they're reinforced.
That's great. Anyone else have anything to share about diversity and values?
And I would like to comment again on the recruitment piece and the retention piece, to also look at reaching out to various entities, just as we do for purchasing, that we make sure that our RFPs and our things, look at DBEs, that we're focusing on making sure that we're outreaching and that we're stretching to include different groups, different diversity groups, to interact with our constituents and with our community and with our employees and our organizations, where we go out and we may facilitate job fairs through HBCUs in the community, business events that will bring cultural organizations, again, different agencies, the Goodwill, the Salvation Army, Veterans Affairs, that we are looking at all areas of diversity, and that we're really focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We may not have a position on site, but our outreach will foster and show the support that we have in making sure that we're whole and that we're connected and that we are encouraging to make sure that we're exemplifying those diversity efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think it was April's point, having that training to have that internal commitment for it to then kind of showcase itself during that interview process, or as employees were out and about within our community and representing our agencies, is something that has both that internal and that external impact.
One of the things too that we have done, Kim, is the metrics. So now we're able, because we were so manual before, with our new system that we have, we're able to capture that data where we didn't have it before, and we can see what our diversity numbers are. We can see, the ethnicity factors. We can see our veteran status. We can capture, we can see how we are hiring. Our goal is to transform the way our community looks at government. We want to be different. Right. So we want to be able to say that we are doing everything possible within our organization to be diverse and inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead, Deborah.
We're also able to use, so we in our EEOC plan, we actually target particular job classes that we need to encourage diversity. And so we're able to use RSS feeds from I know that's a technical term, but basically we can use these feeds to filter out those job classes and then use that in LinkedIn to target groups in LinkedIn and Facebook that have the diversity that we're trying to target. And so that has really helped us to, not just treat diversity as a blanket initiative, but really to encourage diversity in professional positions, in our management positions as well. Outside of, just saying we're a diverse employer, we really, because we found our greatest challenge was actually a diversity in our applicant pool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's where oftentimes when we're making decisions as HR professionals, one term that I bring with me from my most recent agency is that we need to be making data-driven decisions. And so when we invest money in these technologies, we need to be able to have that analytics and reporting to go with it. And so when I would encourage any of you that are exploring technologies, make sure to consider that analytics and reporting piece, because those data-driven decisions are going to be those decisions that, should someone from your community ask, why did this happen or why did that happen, you're going to have that data to go in and back you up and support you, or just to provide more color to any type of situation that you might find yourself into. So I think that has all been extremely helpful information. We have had some really great questions come in. So I would like to now kind of navigate us into the Q&A session. Pam, the first one's actually for you. So we have a question from Tony Ashmore. How did the unions respond to the alternate work schedules, and what did you offer to the first responders in this case?
So the unions did a really good job of helping to respond quickly to that. For the first responders, we really used information that also came from the county, because our county and city are separate. So we were really watching what the county did with the CARES Act. And then we were able to do something similar, not quite to the same level that they did, but we were able to utilize those funds to help first responders.
Did anyone else have to work with any unions during this time where we were having to kind of practice that power of the pivot?
No.
Yes, absolutely. I think we had a great response by our employee organizations to partner with us. I think the nature of COVID and the need to take care of our community really, everybody needed to be a partner in responding to the community. So we actually had great partnership with leave programs, schedule changes, telework. We renewed our telework policy. We updated and changed our telework agreements. And so we did have great partnership with our employee organizations.
Yep. And April, did I hear you chiming in just a moment ago?
We worked with fire. We have fire staff, and so our negotiations with the IAFF, we worked partners with them hand in hand through the COVID response, and continue to work with them. They were there at the EOC Center. They were helped, with all the response times with the vaccinations and everything that was going on during that time. In fact, I believe they even did some negotiations during that time. So, or had started negotiations. So there, those types of things continue to go on no matter what kind of pandemic is going on. So you had staff that were involved in that process as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So our next question is for you, Deborah. It kind of takes us back to your speed dating model that you mentioned earlier. This question's from Derek Ford. He says, did you guys conduct those reference checks prior to the interview in order to have that flexibility to make the offers on the spot, or where did that fit in your process?
That's important. Our offer is a conditional offer, so it's conditional on reference check, background, and also medical that need to be passed. And so it isn't a conditional offer. It's not our final offer. So good question.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question from Sonia. It says, Deborah, this one's for you as well. It says, what kind of learning program does your company provide? So what's kind of the scope of your training program?
Sure. So we have, through Center of Organizational Effectiveness, we have an executive leadership program for first-time supervisors, managers, and executive staff. And then we also have, through our Learning Development Center, training around diversity, change management, all of our computer skills that we've had to learn, and collaboration. And then they also link up to our EAP program as well, and bring in courses on stress or finances or planning for retirement. And then we have NEOGOV's Learn. And so on the NEOGOV Learn platform, it has courseware about leadership, it has courseware for our road staff around safety. It has all of our mandatory training for DHCP, discrimination and harassment training, all is available on our Learn platform, as well as custom courses that our social services and health agency staff take. So we have actually been able on really a very little budget to really extend our learning program. We have 1.5 FTE managing that learning program for around 3,100 employees. So we couldn't do it without both the Center for Organizational Effectiveness and the learning management system.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a very robust learning program set up, and your employees are clearly using it if they're doing 75 hours a day. So that's amazing. I'm going to put this question out kind of just to the panel as a whole. But in regards to remote work, how have you gotten leadership or those elected officials to see past the barriers of extra costs of having to have some of that home setup mimic the office, or paying for any of those types of costs from working from home, internet stipends or additional equipment?
We utilized a commitment statement. So it was a partnership. So that way the employees understood the commitment that the organization was investing. And as far as the monetary piece and the commitment that the commissioners or the aldermen or the mayoral groups were adding to. So we signed a partner agreement that this is a remote agreement, and that it's a mutual understanding that it's a win-win situation. However, it's a business agreement. So again, it's a partnership.
Yeah. We had something similar at my prior agency. It was like telework was not an active, often used policy or an agreement, but we did have that agreement, and it said, it was subject for review on a certain number of days, but once that FFCRA leave was running out, we had to, again, think out of the box on what we can do to help support our employees while they're parents, and caregivers, and we were still in this scenario in which we needed to have that flexibility with our work arrangements and allow our employees to be met where they are. So I think that's great. Great suggestion there. Anyone else have anything to add?
We just did the same thing that Cheryl just discussed, and really took a hard look at the positions that can do that, really do that well. There are just a lot of positions we have that can't do remote. So that, that was a struggle a little bit to be able to explain that, and really identifying what positions are truly face-to-face. And once we got through that, then I think everything is kind of ironed out. But yeah, we did the remote agreements as well.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, Deborah.
We've had to really also focus on giving managers skills for managing in a different way those remote staff, because that has that's been a big change for managers with remote staff that are used to seeing their people and seeing them at work. And so we have had to address within our leadership and management team, how do I do this outside of an office context?
Yeah, absolutely. April, yeah.
Yeah, to what Pam and Cheryl and Deborah have all said, we did basically the same thing too. We had an agreement, we had a remote policy, and the remote work is based upon position. So we would have three options: full remote, hybrid, which was an office remote, and then a not direct public contact. But there were positions that are involved in maintenance and upkeep of facilities, and our grounds are exempt.
Sure.
And to double back and circle back, as Pam said, it's hard to really discern which positions are essential, which can come in, which can come out, or work remotely. And that's a tough conversation to be able to help those employees understand, because everyone is important. But you really have to be careful, and you have to have that skill set to help them understand this is where we are, and this is how we need to navigate based on our community or our position.
Right. Yeah, we still have to have that equity across our workforce, and achieving balance when it comes to what we can and can't do for services that still need to be delivered, but allowing that employee to have that work-life balance. So the other piece of that question, the extra costs of what it can have to be set up. Some of the things that I've heard as I speak to some of my fellow HR professionals is, so often it was desktops. So they've transitioned to having laptop computers, whether you were in or out of the office. Should an emergency happen, at least this is someone who could take that computer home to be able to work remote should they have to. Or to be able to be more mobile, and maybe we have those flexible cubicle schedules, where we can work in different areas throughout the agency. But I think the additional funding, like the CARES Act funding and ARPA funding that's been available, I think a lot of agencies had leaned into that at that point. So when we talk about buying technologies, it may not just be software, but it could also have included some of that hardware that we're having to provide for those people that are working remotely. Want to take a pause real quick here, see if we have any additional questions coming in. But if not, any kind of closing thoughts from the panel before we close our time today? Well,
I think just
go ahead, Deborah, and then we'll go to Pam.
I think just an encouraging word. I think if you have not utilized a lot of technology in your HR processes, it can be a bit daunting when you get started, and to also recognize that you don't have to be next level on everything, to just begin in one critical area, and over time you will have things automated, because certainly we have been on a 6-year journey of automating HR and data-driven decision making. We weren't at this place 6 years ago.
Right.
And I'll echo what Deborah said. It is a journey, and we have done the same thing. We have 452 supervisors across the city. So we've really spent a lot of time working with them because they're the frontline group that knows their team the best. They know their department the best. And over the last 5 years, we've worked with them very much to create a really strong partnership. And they have really helped us identify, I want to know where their pain points are, because they're the ones I'm supporting, trying to get people hired quickly, the whole thing. And we really have transitioned to, with almost as much as we could possibly make done by technology, we've done it, until we just get to the point where we can't. Now it becomes the human side. And that was a big shift for us because it was so manual in the beginning. But now they love it. And every time we talk to them, we always say, we're going to pilot this next thing. And they're like, I know what that word means. That means you're slowly going to make us do it. But they end up, because I really try to think of it like I'm them, right? And so is this going to save them time, or am I just adding something to their plate? And so by having that partnership, I think has really solidified HR as a partner to the organization, and they love it now. Now they're like, where has this been all my life? So that has been probably, I would say, the biggest, funnest part of transitioning to helping our teams.
Yep. Cheryl, any last thoughts from you?
Yes, again, as an organizational professional, as HR practitioners, we need to ensure that we understand our people, we understand their needs. We need to treat them like VIPs, very important people. Not only the employees, our constituents, our aldermen, our commissioners, our administrators, and again, be the ambassador. Be the ambassador of goodwill, of recruitment, for a recruitment purpose, retention. Not only should we do exit interviews to find out why they're leaving, do new hire interviews or interventional kind of things where every 30 days or every 60 days or the first 90 days, do a new hire survey. How are we doing? Does this meet your expectation? So let us know on the front end how things are going instead of waiting to the end when they're walking out the door. So just a helpful toolkit tip right there.
All right, April.
So I too would like to encourage everyone, because I am in an organization now where we are new into our journey of automation of processes. So it's not going to happen overnight. So I want to encourage everyone else who's in the same boat that we are. Don't be afraid to reach out to other county peer groups or organizations that maybe have information, because you can get a wealth of information from people who are going through the same process that you're going through right now, and they can tell you the challenges that they faced and how they overcame it. So don't be afraid. You will get through it. It gets easier a little bit at the time. So you just have to keep, chugging along until you get to where you need to be for your community.
Absolutely. I know that this has been so beneficial for myself. We want to thank the amazing audience for all of your engagement today and your attendance. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists for taking time out of their day and joining us and sharing such wonderful information. We are going to be doing more webinars like this, so please keep an eye out as we're going to have some other topics that are just specific to our HR professionals that are out there. So again, thank you to everyone for taking time out of your day to be here, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.